my wife cried, when our tenant moved out. Now I found photos of him hidden in her underwear drawer. I'm a 36-year-old man, and I thought my marriage was safe. Not perfect, God knows we've had our ups and downs, but solid. Built on 12 years of shared history, one quiet wedding, 2 cats, and a mortgage we both complained about, but secretly took pride in. Her name is Clara, and until recently, I thought I knew her better than anyone on this planet. She's not flashy, not the overly romantic type. Clara's the kind of woman who shows love by folding your laundry exactly how you like it, who remembers how you take your coffee, and always adds an extra sugar cube on tough days. We're quiet people. We work hard. We save. We don't take big risks. Last year, we renovated the guest studio above our garage, turned it into a beautiful little one-bedroom with a kitchenette and separate entrance. Clara decorated it herself, light woods, warm tones, those little framed quotes about joy and balance. It was hers, in every way. We listed it on a rental platform, and found a tenant almost immediately. His name was Eli, late 20s, PhD student. Friendly, respectful, always smiling. The kind of guy who remembers to say hello when bringing in his groceries, and doesn't leave the gate open for the cats to escape. He had charm, but in a soft-spoken, bookish kind of way. Clara liked him instantly. He's sweet, she said once. Like good energy sweet. I didn't think much of it. He paid on time, kept to himself, occasionally joined us for dinner. We had him over on New Year's Eve for champagne and board games. I remember Clara laughing at one of his stupid jokes, eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. I remember thinking, good, she's happy. We all need more friends. It didn't occur to me that something could be wrong, not until he moved out. It was abrupt. One afternoon in March, Eli knocked on our door, and said he had to leave earlier than planned. He didn't offer much explanation, just said something about a new opportunity abroad. Clara was quiet during the whole conversation, barely spoke, just nodded. When he left 2 days later, she didn't say goodbye, stayed upstairs the whole time. I assumed she was tired, or avoiding the awkwardness. But that night, I woke up at 2 a.m., and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me, shoulders trembling. Clara. She wiped her face quickly and said, I'm fine, just a headache. But I knew she'd been crying, and I didn't ask why. The next morning, I went out to the studio to check if Eli had left anything behind. He hadn't. The place was spotless. But I found something odd. One of Clara's hair ties, sitting on the bathroom counter. Pale blue. Definitely not his. I brought it back in and asked her about it. She barely glanced at it. Must be dropped it when I cleaned. Did you go in there recently? Yeah. After he left. But her tone was off. Tight. Defensive. And that's when something cracked open in my brain. Not a full-blown suspicion. Just an ease. A shift. A question I didn't want to ask. Days passed. Clara was different. Distracted. Distant. She didn't laugh at my dumb impressions anymore. She didn't initiate conversation. She started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. She'd stare at her phone in the kitchen, screen angled away from me. I tried not to overthink it. But the thing about doubt is, once it's in, it festers. Last week, she asked me to grab something from her dresser, a receipt for a work expense. I opened the wrong drawer. It was the one with her underwear. I felt weird rummaging through it, so I pulled gently at the folded stack of lace and cotton, looking for an envelope or a small pouch. That's when I saw them, tucked between 2 old t-shirts. Photos. Printed. 4 or 5 of them. At first, I thought they were ours. Old vacation pictures maybe. But when I pulled them out, they were all of Eli. One of him sitting on our porch, looking off into the distance. One of him laughing with a coffee cup in hand. One at the lake from that one time we all went hiking together. And one of him sleeping. That last one hit me like a fist. He was lying on our couch, curled up under our gray throw blanket, mouth slightly open. The photo had that candid softness, unposed, intimate, too personal to be innocent. My blood went cold. I put the photos back exactly where I found them, closed the drawer, walked downstairs, and stared at Clara as she stirred pasta sauce, humming softly to herself like nothing in the world was wrong. I haven't said anything yet. I don't know what to say. I don't even know what I'm looking at. But something inside me has changed. Irreversibly. And the woman I sleep beside every night might not be the woman I think she is. The next few days were pure agony. Not because Clara changed, but because she didn't. She went on like everything was fine. She reminded me about midnight, texted me grocery lists, kissed me good morning. She even brought me a croissant on Wednesday, like she used to back when we first moved in together. I should be been grateful. I should be felt loved. Instead, I felt like I was being managed, handled, as if she sensed I'd seen something, and this was her subtle way of smoothing it over before I could ask questions. But I couldn't stop thinking about the photos, especially the one of Eli sleeping. Who took that? And why keep it? Why hide it in the one drawer she never lets me touch? I started watching her. I know how that sounds, but once the seed of doubt takes root, everything becomes a clue. Every little movement, every glance, every word weighed and measured. She kept checking her phone in the bathroom, late at night, early in the morning, always with her back turned. One night, I pretended to be asleep. Around 1:40 a.m. I heard the bathroom door click shut. I waited 5 minutes, then 6. I got up quietly and stepped into the hallway. The light was glowing under the door. I crept closer. She was whispering, soft, careful, intimate. I couldn't make out the words. I knocked. The whispering stopped. A pause. Then the flush. The faucet. The door opened. She smiled. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just thirsty. She nodded. Go back to bed. I'll be right there. And I did. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, I checked her browser history. I know. It's invasive. It's not who I want to be. But I had to know. She had cleared it. Which she never does. Another piece of the puzzle I never asked to build. That evening, I made us both tea. Left hers on the table while she was in the shower. And when she came back down, robe tied loose at the waist, hair damp, she sat across from me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, Are you okay? I froze. What do you mean? You've been off. Distant. Like you're waiting for something. I wanted to scream you're projecting, but I kept my voice calm. I could ask you the same. She flinched, almost imperceptibly, then smiled. Is this about Eli? Bingo. I stayed quiet. She sipped her tea. You've been weird since he left. And you cried when he moved out. She didn't deny it. I was emotional, she said. We spent time with him. He was part of our home. That's allowed, isn't it? Sure, I said, as long as it wasn't more than that. Her eyes met mine. For a second, I saw something flicker behind them. Fear, anger, sadness. Then it was gone. I'm going to bed, she said. You coming? I shook my head. In a bit. She stood, paused, and said softly, He admired you. You know. What? Eli. He thought you were kind, balanced, that we were lucky to have found each other. Then she walked upstairs, and I was left there, heart thudding like a war drum, wondering what the hell that was supposed to mean. The next day, I searched the studio. It was technically ours now again. She was back to cleaning it, rearranging furniture like she was preparing it for a new tenant. She had fresh flowers on the windowsill, but in the closet, behind a box of old linens, I found something she missed. A journal. Not his. Hers. I didn't know she kept one. It was plain black. No title. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But I did. The entries weren't long. Most were dated over the last year. And one sentence caught my eye immediately. When he looks at me, I feel visible. It's like remembering who I was before I was someone's wife. My mouth went dry. I flipped to the next page. He never touched me. Not really. But God, I thought about it. Every time he smiled. Every time he made coffee and left the spoon crooked in the sink. I read until my hands shook. Entry after entry. Not confessions. Cravings. Regrets. What ifs. Fantasies. All about Eli. And one, dated the week he left, he asked me to come with him. Just once. No pressure. Just, you'd like Berlin. I told him no. But I wanted to say yes. I wanted to run. I didn't. But I'll always wonder. I put the journal back exactly where I found it. And I walked out of that studio feeling like my chest had been hollowed out. Because the truth was worse than cheating. It was almost. It was a door she wanted to open, and maybe still regrets not opening. That night, she reached for me in bed. Not sexually. Just her hand brushing mine under the covers. I didn't pull away. But I didn't move toward her either. Because I don't know who she's really reaching for. May. Or the version of me she had to choose because the one she wanted got away. I didn't touch her for a week. Not out of punishment. Not even out of anger. Just numbness. That dull, thick distance that settles between two people when a truth has been unearthed but left unsaid. Clara pretended not to notice. Or maybe she did notice and pretended she didn't. She still made the bed every morning. Still kissed my cheek goodbye. Still sent me links to funny cat videos during lunch. But everything felt off. Like we were playacting a life that had already crumbled. And I was no longer sure whether I wanted to fix it, or burn it down. I started thinking about Berlin. The way she'd written it in her journal. You'd like Berlin. 4 words. Innocent enough. But now they rang in my head like a loaded gun. What would she have done if he'd asked twice? Would she have followed him? Would she have said goodbye? Or just disappeared? I wanted to ask her. I wanted to scream the question at her, in the middle of the night. But I didn't, because I was afraid of the answer. Then, something changed. It was Friday evening. I came home from work. Shoes still on, jacket half off, and Clara was already seated on the living room floor, legs crossed, wine in hand, A stack of printed photos spread out around her. Old ones. Eyes. From years ago. Paris. The cottage in Normandy. My stupid birthday party, where I wore that ugly gold crown. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes were glassy. I'm trying to remember us, she said. I froze in the doorway. What do you mean? She reached for a photo. Us on the beach, wind in our hair. Her hand on my chest. This, she whispered. This was before the mortgage. Before we started sleeping with our backs to each other. Before you stopped asking how I really feel. I wanted to tell her I do ask, but maybe I don't. Maybe I just assume. She picked up another one. New Year's Eve, blurry, both of us drunk and laughing. I don't want to be the woman who almost cheated, she said. My stomach dropped. Almost. She said it. She said it out loud. You didn't? I asked, voice hoarse. She shook her head. No, but I wanted to. And that's just as ugly. Silence. Then she added, I never touched him, but I gave him something that should have been yours. What? She looked up at me. Her eyes didn't flinch. Pieces of myself, the ones I'd locked away for years. We sat in silence for a long time, and then I asked the one thing I'd been terrified to say out loud. Do you still love me? She didn't answer right away, and in that pause, I swear my world ended. Then she said, quietly, yes, but I don't think I know how anymore. The next day, I went back to the studio. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed to stand where it happened, or didn't happen, or almost happened. The place felt different now. Still clean, still filled with light, but haunted. I sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the walls she'd painted. The little bookshelf he'd left behind. The throw blanket from our living room, still folded in the corner. That's when I saw it. Tucked behind a loose panel near the bottom of the bookshelf. A letter, addressed to Clara. No envelope. Just a single sheet of paper, handwritten in blue ink. I didn't want to read it. I read it anyway. Clara, you told me once that you stopped listening to music in the shower because it made you feel things you didn't want to feel. That stuck with me. I don't know what you'll do. Maybe you'll stay. Maybe you'll run. But I need you to know, whatever version of yourself you choose to be, you deserve to be seen, fully, loudly, every part of you. Thank you for letting me see you. If you ever come to Berlin, I'll be waiting. Eli. I sat there for a long time, with that letter in my hands. Not angry, not heartbroken, just shattered, because now I knew. He didn't just flirt. He didn't just admire. He loved her. And I think, deep down, she loved him too. That night, I put the letter back exactly where I found it. And when I climbed into bed beside Clara, I asked, why didn't you go? She was quiet. Then she whispered, because you still look at me like I'm worth staying for. But I didn't know if that was enough anymore, because the woman beside me had been halfway out the door, and I didn't even hear it open. The morning after I found the letter, I couldn't look at her the same. Not because I hated her, but because I finally saw her. The version of Clara I'd been living with these last few years, the quiet, responsible, emotionally reserved woman who kept us afloat, was only part of who she really was. The rest had been tucked away in longing glances, in late-night whispers behind the bathroom door, and in a letter from a man who knew her better than I had in years. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the attraction, not even the feelings, but the intimacy they shared in secret. Clara noticed my distance right away. I was quieter at breakfast. I didn't refill her coffee like usual. When she left for work, she touched my shoulder lightly and said, "You're allowed to talk to me, you know." I wanted to ask her, "Do you still have the letter? Did you write him back? Have you thought about going since then? Since he left? Since he offered you another life?" But I didn't, because I knew I wasn't ready to hear the answer. That weekend, I went to stay with my sister. I told Clara I needed space. Time to think. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just said, "Take what you need," which, somehow, made it worse. My sister lives alone in a small apartment, with loud plants and louder opinions. When I walked in, she hugged me tight and said, "All right, start talking." And I did, for hours. I told her about the photos, the journal, the letter, about how I felt like a backup plan in my own marriage, about how Eli had taken the parts of Clara I'd lost and wrapped them in something soft and electric. She listened without judgment. Then she said something that stayed with me. Sometimes the person you marry grows into someone else, and sometimes they grow towards someone else. That doesn't mean you failed, but it does mean you have a choice now. I stared at her. What choice? To chase who she used to be, or to finally ask her who she really is? 3 days later, I went home. I found Clara in the kitchen, barefoot, eating leftover pasta from the container. She looked surprised, then relieved, then guarded. We didn't talk much that night, but before bed, I sat on the edge of the mattress and said, "I found the letter." She didn't pretend to be confused. Her face just dropped. "I see," she whispered. "I wasn't looking for it. It was just there." She nodded. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm hurt, and confused, and a little humiliated." I didn't send a letter back, she said. Why not? Because if I did it would have made it real. I watched her for a long moment. Wasn't it already real? She didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. Over the next week, we talked. Truly talked. Not small talk. Not grocery lists or shared tasks, or what the neighbor said about the recycling bins. We talked about our marriage, about how we drifted, about the nights she cried quietly beside me, because she didn't know how to ask for more without sounding ungrateful, about the years I spent lost in work, assuming stability was the same thing as love, about the way Eli looked at her like a lighthouse, and the way I hadn't looked at her in a very long time. She cried once, late one night, in the living room, wrapped in the blanket he used to nap under. I'm scared, she said. Of what? That we're already over. That we're just too scared to admit it. I didn't know what to say, because I was scared too. Scared that I'd never get those pieces of her back. Scared that even if she stayed, she'd always wonder. Scared that I wasn't enough, and maybe never had been. Then she asked me something unexpected. Do you want me to be honest? Completely. I think I loved him, she said. Not like I love you, but in a way I didn't know I was capable of anymore. I nodded. And for the first time, I believed her, because there was no venom in her voice, just grief. We slept in separate rooms after that, not out of spite, but out of space, the kind of space you give something when you're not ready to let go but not sure how to hold it either. One night, I sat in the studio alone. I lit a candle, played some music, the kind Clara used to avoid, slow, emotional, a little too real, and I wrote a letter, not to Eli, to Hi, Clara, I miss you, not the you from 10 years ago. Not the one who made coffee, or folded laundry or sat beside me, in silence pretending everything was fine. I miss the you who laughs with your whole face. The one who dances barefoot in the hallway when she thinks no one's watching. The woman who wanted to run to Berlin but stayed. I don't want her back because she was mine. I want her back because she was you. And if she's still in there, somewhere, I'd like to meet her again. If you let me, May. I left the letter on her pillow and went to bed alone. Not sure if she'd read it, not sure what she'd say, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift, something open, something like a beginning. She didn't mention the letter the next morning. She made coffee, folded the blanket on the couch, kissed me on the forehead, the usual, like nothing had changed. But when I got home from work that evening, there was a note waiting for me, one of those small square sticky ones we used to leave on the fridge when we first moved in together. It read, "Come to the studio, I want to talk." See, I went. The space looked different. Same walls, same furniture, but it felt softer. Lit candles, jazz in the background, a bottle of wine on the table, and her, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, like she was bracing herself. I sat across from her. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then she handed me something. Her journal, the one I'd found. I know you read it, she said. It's okay. I would have read it too. I didn't deny it. She pointed to a bookmark near the end. That page wasn't there when you found it. I wrote it 3 nights ago. I opened it March the 17th. I used to think I was broken, that the part of me who wanted to run, to feel, to be touched, to be desired, was something ugly I had to bury to be a good wife, a loyal wife, a functioning adult. But now I realize it wasn't about cheating. It was about starving. And somewhere in the slow rhythm of our safe little life, I forgot how to ask to be fed. Eli saw me, but he didn't hold me. He didn't earn me. He just reminded me that I still exist. And now that I know that, I want to be seen by the person who's been beside me the whole time. If he still wants me. My throat tightened. I closed the journal. Clara watched me carefully. I didn't want to lie to you anymore. About anything. I almost left. I almost became a story we'd tell in different apartments with different people. But I didn't. And that has to count for something. It does, I said. But I also understand if it's not enough. Silence. She whispered, "Is it?" And I realized I didn't know. Not yet. But I wanted to try. I stood up, moved beside her on the couch, took her hand. "I'm not promising we'll go back to who we were," I said. "I'm not even sure we should, but I'm willing to find out who we are now, if you are." She nodded, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't look afraid. She looked seen. We started again, slowly, not as lovers, as strangers, with history. We set rules. No pretending everything's okay. No late-night phone secrets. Full honesty, even when it hurts. We agreed to therapy, joint and individual. I learned things I didn't want to hear, like how long she'd felt invisible, how often she'd fantasized about leaving, how the intimacy between us had become mechanical, more duty than desire. But I also told her things I'd never said aloud, that I'd stopped feeling chosen, that I resented her silence, but never dared confront it, that I too had imagined a different life, without her, not out of betrayal, but out of exhaustion. Then something happened that neither of us expected. We started writing to each other. Real letters. Paper and ink. She left the first one on my nightstand. A simple note. You were the first person to make me laugh after my father died. That version of me still lives in the way I laugh. When you call the cats weirdos. I miss her. I wrote back. You still laugh like that. You just forgot what it sounds like. The letters became nightly, sometimes long, sometimes just 3 words, sometimes brutal, sometimes poetic. It was like falling in love with the memory of someone you thought you'd lost. And slowly, I stopped seeing Eli. When I looked at her, I stopped imagining Berlin. I started noticing her again. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she read. The way she hummed when concentrating. The way she always left one sock on the floor, just barely inside out. Not because I had to forgive, but because I wanted to. Then one night, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you want to know the moment I almost kissed him? I stared at her. She waited. Then I said, yes. She nodded. It was raining. He came home soaked. I gave him a towel. He sat on the bench by the window. He looked up at me and said, do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you made one different decision? I said yes. And he looked at me like I was the decision. I swallowed hard. And then I stepped back, she said, and said, don't make me do something I'll never be able to take back. I looked at her. Why didn't you tell me that before? She smiled, faint and sad. Because I didn't know if I meant it. Until now. We haven't recovered. Not fully. But something new is forming in the ashes. Something messier, less pretty, more true. And last week, she wrote me this. I stayed for the man you used to be, but I'm rebuilding my heart for the man you're becoming. I hope I'm someone new, too. I keep that one in my wallet. Right behind our wedding photo. The one where we were both laughing. So young. So naive. So in love. It's strange. The things that rebuild you. It's not the grand gestures. Not the apologies or therapy breakthroughs. Not even the tearful promises whispered in the middle of the night. It's the small moments. The Tuesday mornings, where she slides a cup of coffee toward me and asks, did you sleep okay? The way she touches my arm when I walk past her in the hallway, not because she wants something, but because she notices me now. Or the night she came into my office while I was working late, didn't say a word, and just sat on the floor, leaning against my leg. Quiet, present, still choosing me. These are the bricks we've started laying, one at a time. We've kept writing to each other. The letters have changed. They're no longer about the past, or what we regret. Now they're about what we notice, what we're grateful for. One evening, I left her a note inside the fridge, taped to the oat milk she loves. You always put your shoes in the same spot by the door. I used to find it annoying. Now I find it reassuring. Don't ever stop. She replied by sticking a post-it to my shaving cream the next morning. You sing when you're stressed. Off key. Loud. It's terrible. I missed it. It sounds silly, maybe even childish. But for us, it's become sacred. Because those little details, they're proof we're paying attention again. But healing isn't linear. And some nights, it hits all over again. A smell. A photo. An empty studio that still holds the shape of someone else's presence. We tried renting the space out again, but Clara couldn't go through with it. It feels like I'd be erasing it before I understand it, she said. So we left it empty. And then one day, she turned it into a reading room, painted the walls darker, added velvet curtains, put a record player in the corner. I watched her through the window one afternoon as she sat on the floor, arranging books, barefoot in an old sweatshirt. It was the first time I saw her look truly at peace in months. We started sleeping together again. Not just physically, but emotionally. It wasn't like before. It was quieter, slower, more like permission than desire. The first time, she cried after, not because she was sad, but because she said, I didn't know if you'd ever want to touch me again. I kissed her shoulder and said, I didn't know either, but I'm glad I still do. One day, I found her writing a new journal entry. I didn't ask to read it, but she handed it to me April the 7th. It still hurts. That I wanted someone else. That someone else wanted me. That I was seconds away from becoming another woman with a secret too heavy to carry. But I didn't. And he left. And now I live with the version of myself that stayed. That chose the hard thing. That kept waking up in a house that felt colder than Berlin ever would have been. And he, my husband, the one who should hate me most, he stayed too. I don't know where this is going, but I know we're walking toward each other again. And that counts for something. A few nights later, we had dinner with friends. No one asked about Eli. No one asked why we'd gone silent for a few months. But one of our friends, Ava, pulled Clara aside when I was in the kitchen and said, You look different. Clara smiled and said, I feel different. Later, I asked her what she meant by that. She thought for a second, then said, I feel like I'm allowed to be all the parts of me again. It's not over. It never really will be. Because the truth doesn't disappear just because we forgive it. Some part of me will always remember the photo in the drawer, the journal, the letter. Some part of her will always remember the window bench, the rain, and the offer to go to Berlin. But those memories don't own us anymore. They sit beside us, quiet, like old ghosts finally given names. One night, as we got into bed, I asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd said yes?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "No, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stayed." I reached over, held her hand, not like before, but like it mattered again, because that's what rebuilding really is. Not erasing the cracks, but tracing them, gently, and saying, "I still choose you, here, inside the fracture." A few weeks ago, we went away for the weekend, just Clara and me. No phones, no emails, no routines. We rented a small cabin by the coast, the kind with creaky floors, sea salt in the air, and no TV, just a fireplace, a kettle, and the sound of waves somewhere in the distance. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It was a test, to see if we still knew how to be just us, without the safety net of habit. The first night was awkward. We forgot how to talk without screens or shared logistics. We played a card game and barely laughed. We sat on the porch and watched the sky darken in silence. But the second night, we found it. That thread. She was brushing her hair on the couch, and I made some stupid comment about how she still uses that same plastic comb she's had since college. She rolled her eyes. I teased her. She threw a pillow. I dodged. We laughed. And the tension, months of tension, broke like a dam. She curled into me and whispered, "I was afraid we forgot how to do this." I kissed the top of her head. "I was afraid you didn't want to." She looked up at me, and without any hesitation said, "I do. I still do." On our last night there, we sat on the beach wrapped in a blanket, wind whipping around us, sand cold under our feet. She turned to me, and said something I'll never forget. "If I had gone to Berlin, I think I would have been happy for a while. He made me feel alive, seen, but I would have woken up 6 months later with an ache I couldn't explain. And I think that ache would have been you." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, she wasn't just justifying her decision to stay, she was mourning the version of herself that almost didn't. When we came home, we found the studio covered in dust. She hadn't stepped inside since turning it into a reading room. We cleaned it together, rearranged the bookshelves, took down the quotes she once hung on the wall when Eli lived there. And when we were done, she took my hand and said, "Let's make it something for us now." So we did. We turned it into a studio for writing, for sketching, for music, for us. No ghosts, no secrets, just a shared space, finally honest. And then came the real test. The anniversary of Ella's departure. A date I thought would quietly pass. A date I hoped would quietly pass. But Clara didn't let it. She brought it up one evening while we were folding laundry. "It's been a year since he left," she said softly. I looked at her. She folded a towel. "I think about him sometimes. I think I always will. Not in the same way, but as a fork in the road." I nodded. "I think about him too," I said. "Not him, exactly. Just what he represented." She smiled, sad and warm. "Freedom, escape, from everything we didn't want to face." "Do you still want to escape?" I shook my head. "No, not anymore." She took my hand. "I think we did something harder than escaping," she said. "We stayed, and we made it matter. I don't know what the future holds. I know we're not the same people we were, and I wouldn't want to be, because now, we ask the hard questions. We speak the truth, even when it stings. We don't wait for breakdowns to check in. We don't hide behind politeness or obligation. We're not perfect, but we're present." Last night, Clara left a letter on my pillow, just like before. It read, "I wanted to run once, but now I realize, what I really wanted was to be caught. And you did. Not by dragging me back, but by waiting until I turned around. Thank you for turning around too. I love the man you are now, not because you fought for me, but because you made me want to fight for you." I read it 3 times before turning off the light. And for the first time in nearly a year, I fell asleep without the weight of unspoken things pressing against my chest. Not because everything is healed, but because we finally know the shape of what broke. And we're building something stronger in its place. Together. It's been 13 months since Eli left. And now, when I think of him, it's not with bitterness or jealousy or even anger. It's with clarity. Because Eli didn't destroy our marriage. He revealed the cracks we'd been too afraid to see. The emotional distance. The unspoken disappointments. The rituals we confused for intimacy. The parts of each other we stopped reaching for. He walked into our lives like a mirror. And what Clara saw in that reflection changed everything. The studio is filled with light now. We added a small couch by the window. She writes there in the mornings. I sketch or journal in the afternoons. Sometimes we read our work to each other. Sometimes we just sit quietly, sharing the space. No tension, no secrets, just us. Different, but not broken. My parents came to visit recently. My dad, blunt as ever, pulled me aside and said, "You two seem better, happier, even." And I said, "We're not happier. We're honest now." He didn't get it, but Clara did. Later that evening, she squeezed my hand under the dinner table and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." I whispered back, "Thank you for choosing me." Again, there are still hard days, moments where a shadow creeps in, where I wonder if I'll ever be fully enough, where she wonders if she can ever make me fully trust her again. But we don't run from those days. We talk, we write, we trace the scar and say, this is where it healed. Not perfectly, but honestly. People think the opposite of betrayal is loyalty, but I think it's visibility. Seeing each other, hearing the quiet cries before they become screams, noticing the weight someone carries before they set it down at someone else's feet. Eli saw Clara in a moment where I didn't, and I've made peace with that, because now, I see her, not as the woman I married, but as the woman who stayed, the woman who almost left, and chose not to, and I know she sees me too. Today, Clara left a single note on my desk. I finally played music in the shower today, and I let myself feel it. Thank you for waiting for me to come back, even when I didn't know if I would. P.S. It was Nora Jones. Of course it was. So if you're asking whether marriages survive these things, the near misses, the emotional betrayals, the almost loves, yes, they can. Not by forgetting, not by pretending it never happened, but by choosing again, every day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, especially then. I still don't know if we'll last forever, but I know this. We've walked through the worst version of us. We've faced the parts we tried to hide, and we came out holding hands. That has to mean something, even if some days, I still wonder what would have happened if she said yes to Berlin. Even if some nights, I lie awake, scared that maybe I was the safe choice, not the right one. But I'm here, and so is she. And we keep choosing each other, again, and again, and again. Follow me for more stories.